Mr. Hayes, if everything is in order, you can sign here. The lawyer across the table, a man with thin gold-rimmed glasses, pushed a set of divorce papers toward me. His formulaic smile held a hint of, well, it was supposed to be professional detachment. My name is Ethan Hayes, and I'm a dimension hopper. 3 days ago, I was in my crappy studio apartment, slurping down a cup of ramen while hate reading a cheesy billionaire romance novel called The CEO's Reluctant Bride. The next thing I knew, I'd woken up as the book's most pathetic, doomed character, who just so happened to share my first name. Ethan, the disposable starter husband of the Ice Queen CEO, Victoria Sterling. In the book, this Ethan was a classic trophy husband. Good-looking, but completely useless, living off his wife's fortune without a second thought, while constantly trying to cheat on her. Ultimately, in the third chapter of the novel, he gets kicked to the curb by Victoria, signs these exact divorce papers, and walks away with a generous settlement. A few days later, he's taken out in a convenient accidental car crash orchestrated by the novel's hero, Damian Blackwood, clearing the final obstacle for the main couple's epic romance. And I'd been dropped right into this scene at the very table where I was supposed to sign my life away. Could it get any better than this? No pointless drama, no public humiliation, just skip straight to the part where I get paid and disappear. I was ecstatic. According to the novel, that generous settlement was a cool $10 million. With that kind of money, I could get the hell out of New York, away from the psycho main characters, buy a house and a car somewhere quiet, and live out my days in comfortable obscurity. It beat the hell out of being collateral damage in this train wreck of a story. Ethan, a voice as crisp and cool as ice cubes clinking in a glass, cut through my thoughts. I looked up and saw my wife, Victoria Sterling. She was wearing an impeccably tailored black power suit, her long hair pulled back in a severe bun that exposed the graceful line of her neck. Her face was a mask of indifference, and her beautiful eyes looked at me with the same detached calm she'd used to review a quarterly financial report. She was every bit the multi-billionaire Ice Queen CEO the novel described. The author, I'll give them, that had nailed the intimidating aura. What are you staring at me for? Sign the damn papers so I can get on with my life, I thought, already picking up the expensive-looking fountain pen. The nib hovered over the paper as I prepared to scrawl my signature. One signature, and I'd be free. Victoria just kept staring at me, silent. The lawyer and her assistant seemed to sense the sudden tension in the room, holding their breath. I was getting confused. What was her deal? Was she having second thoughts about letting this handsome face go? Come on, lady, your actual soulmate, Damien, is waiting in the wings. I cleared my throat, channeling the lazy, arrogant attitude of the original Ethan. What's the holdup? You're the one who was dying for this divorce. Let's get it over with. You're wasting my time. With a flick of my wrist, I started to sign. Suddenly, a hand shot out and clamped down on my own. It was a beautiful hand, with slender fingers and skin as pale as porcelain, but it had a grip like a vice. I was completely pinned. I looked up, startled, and met Victoria's eyes. Her expression was strange. The cold, analytical look was gone. It was replaced by a roiling storm of emotions. I saw pain, regret, and something else I couldn't decipher. Fear? That was impossible. This was Victoria Sterling, the woman who single-handedly dragged Sterling Corporation from the brink of bankruptcy to the top of its industry. She didn't do fear. Victoria, what are you doing? I frowned, trying to pull my hand away. She didn't answer. She just held me in place while her other hand picked up the pen from the table. I relaxed slightly, assuming she was just going to sign her part first. But what she did next left everyone in the room completely stunned. With a sharp snap, the custom Mont Blanc, a pen that probably cost more than my entire pre-transmigration annual salary, was broken cleanly in two. Ink splattered across her hand and onto the pristine white divorce papers, blooming into an ugly, permanent stain. The lawyer's gold-rimmed glasses nearly slid off his nose. Her assistant's jaw dropped open wide enough to fit a baseball. And me? I was completely fried. My brain felt like a crashed computer, with just one word flashing on the blue screen of death. Why? This wasn't in the script. The book said she couldn't wait to get rid of me. So why did she just personally destroy the divorce papers? This meeting is over, Victoria said, dropping the two halves of the pen's corpse onto the table. Her voice was as cold as ever. but if you listen closely, you could hear the faintest tremor. Without another glance at anyone, she turned and walked away. At the door, she paused and looked back at me. "Ethan, come home with me." Her tone wasn't a request. It was the way a CEO speaks to a subordinate, a command. Then, with a sharp click of her heels on the marble floor, she was gone, leaving me to stare at the ink-stained papers and a broken pen, my mind a chaotic mess. Home. What home? More importantly, my $10 million. My dream of a quiet, easy life. Was it all gone? Victoria, what the hell are you playing at? I was essentially escorted back to the penthouse on the Upper East Side by Victoria's security detail. This was technically our home, but in the years since our marriage of convenience began, we'd maintained a strict separation. I lived on the first floor, she lived on the second. We were like two strangers sharing a zip code, and I could count the number of times we'd actually seen each other on one hand. I'd barely stepped into the living room when Victoria's assistant, a young woman named Ashley, scurried in, followed by a team of movers. "Mr. Hayes," Ashley said with a slight bow, her expression a complicated mix of confusion and pity. "Ms. Sterling has instructed us to change your room." I blinked. "Change my room? There's no need. I'm fine on the first floor." Before I could finish, the movers began hauling things into my small guest room. A brand new Alienware gaming PC with a triple monitor setup, a top-of-the-line ergonomic gaming chair, a complete set of a PS5 and an Xbox Series X with a mountain of games stacked beside them, and a massive display cabinet already filled with high-end statues and models I didn't recognize but which looked absurdly expensive. In less than half an hour, my Spartan room, which had contained only a bed and a dresser, was transformed into the ultimate entertainment den, a paradise for any guy. I stared, dumbfounded, feeling like a country bumpkin who'd stumbled into heaven. "Ms. Sterling felt your previous accommodations were inadequate," Ashley explained, pushing her glasses up her nose. "She said that a man should have his own hobbies." My mouth hung open, but no words came out. "Inadequate? Hobbies? Lady, did you get the wrong script? In the book, you tore me a new one for buying a $5,000 watch on your secondary card, lecturing me about being unambitious and obsessed with pleasure. What was this?" As I was questioning my own sanity, Victoria descended from the second floor. She had changed out of her power suit and into a set of silk pajamas. The change softened her corporate sharpness, lending her a more feminine air, but her face remained as impassive as a frozen lake. She walked up to me and handed me a sleek black card. "What's this?" I asked instinctively. "A Centurion card," she said, her tone clipped. "I know it's a black card. Every cheesy novel has one. I'm asking why you're giving it to me." "No limit," she added, as if reading my mind. "The pin is your birthday." My heart skipped a beat, not because of the legendary credit card, but because she actually knew my birthday. In the original story, she barely bothered to use my name, usually opting for "Hey, you or that guy." "I don't need it." I refused, almost on reflex. This was all too weird. Her behavior was so out of character, it was setting off alarm bells. This had to be a trap. Maybe she wanted me to rack up a huge bill before reporting the card stolen and having me thrown in jail. 100 different conspiracy theories flashed through my mind. Victoria looked at me, a slight frown creasing her brow. She seemed genuinely puzzled by my refusal. We stood there, staring at each other, the air thick with tension. Just when I thought she was about to get angry, she did something even more unexpected. She reached out, took my hand, and pressed the black card firmly into my palm. Her fingertips were cool against my skin, sending a shiver through me. "Take it," she said, her voice soft but laced with an unyielding stubbornness. "You deserve it." "I deserve it." What did I deserve? An early grave? I held the thin piece of plastic, but it felt as heavy as lead. "And another thing," she continued, her gaze fixed on me, her tone flat and declarative. "Starting tomorrow, you'll be coming to work with me in my company." "What?" I was sure I'd misheard. "What would I do at your company?" "I don't know anything." The original Ethan was a college dropout with no skills. What could he possibly do at a corporation besides cause trouble? "Vice Director of the Special Projects Division," she stated. I was even more lost. What the hell was that? It sounded like a made-up position for a useless relative. "You don't have to do anything," she added, once again seeming to read my thoughts, her expression unchanging. Just show up, clock out on time, and collect your salary. I was speechless. A top-tier gaming room, an unlimited black card, and now a no-show job with a fancy title. This wasn't a golden parachute. She was trying to bury me alive in money. Victoria Sterling, what in God's name are you planning? Looking at her ice-cold face, I felt a genuine chill run down my spine for the first time. This woman was far more terrifying than the book ever let on. In the end, I couldn't win against Victoria. The next morning, a chauffeur drove me to the Sterling Corporation headquarters, a towering skyscraper that scraped the clouds. It was an impressive, intimidating building. Ashley led me, with what seemed like top-level clearance, all the way to the executive floor, Victoria's exclusive domain. The so-called Special Project Division was an office right next to the CEO's suite. It was about the size of my new game room at the penthouse and came fully equipped with not just a desk, but a sofa, a mini fridge, an espresso machine, and even a small wet bar. Mr. Hayes, your job is to be here, Ashley said, her expression carefully neutral. Ms. Sterling said that if you need anything, you can speak to her directly. I finally got it. This wasn't a job. This was a gilded cage. She was keeping me under her thumb, right where she could see me. I spun around in the plush executive chair, which was more comfortable than the bed in my old apartment. Fine by me. I'd get paid to do nothing. I could just coast here until she got tired of this game and finally agreed to the divorce. Just then, the office door opened. A handsome, distinguished-looking man walked in. He wore a perfectly tailored Armani suit, a Patek Philippe watch on his wrist, and a smile that was just the right amount of charming. I recognized him instantly. Damian Blackwood, the protagonist of the novel, a classic alpha male hero. From the moment he appeared in the story, he began aggressively pursuing Victoria. And today was the day of their first significant interaction in the book. According to the plot, Damian was here to discuss a business partnership with Victoria. During his visit, he would accidentally run into the original Ethan, who would be lazing around the office. Damian would then verbally humiliate him, highlighting his own superiority and making Victoria even more disgusted with her useless husband. "Hello, I'm here to see Ms. Sterling," Damian said, his eyes sweeping over me with a barely concealed flicker of contempt. "Here we go. Showtime." I yawned and lazily pointed to the office next door. "Her office. Knock yourself out." Damian's brow furrowed slightly, clearly annoyed by my disrespectful attitude for a supposed junior employee. But he maintained his composure, gave a curt nod, and walked toward Victoria's office. I perked up my ears, ready for the drama. A few minutes later, Damian and Victoria emerged together. It looked like they were heading to some sort of event. This also matched the book. Tonight's business gala was the first minor climax of the story. At the party, the original Ethan, jealous of Damian and Victoria's rapport, would get belligerently drunk, make a huge scene, and utterly humiliate Victoria. Damian would then step in, playing the gallant hero by dragging the drunken lout away while gently comforting Victoria, earning him his first brownie points with the Ice Queen. My plan was simple. I was not going to that party under any circumstances. If I wasn't there, the plot couldn't happen. "I have a gala tonight. You should," Victoria began, walking over to me. She hesitated, as if unsure of what to say. "I'm not going." I cut her off immediately, shaking my head like a bobblehead. "Not my scene. I'd rather go home and play video games." Victoria stared at me, silent. Beside her, a small smirk played on Damian's lips. He smoothly interjected, "Victoria, if Mr. Hayes isn't comfortable in these kinds of settings, you shouldn't force him. I'll be there to accompany you." The look in his eyes was a condescending cocktail of disdain for me and possessiveness for Victoria. I sneered internally. "Keep acting, buddy." Normally, hearing my completely unambitious response, and with the perfect gentleman Damian by her side, Victoria should have been more than happy to leave me behind. Instead, she shot Damian a cold glare before turning her gaze back to me. "No," she said. "Me? Damian? You have to come with me," she stated, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Why?" I asked, bewildered. "It's not safe for you to be out alone," she said cryptically. Then she grabbed my wrist and started pulling me toward the exit. Her strength was still surprising. I stumbled, practically dragged into the elevator. Damian was left frozen in place, the charming smile stuck on his face. He'd probably never encountered a woman who so thoroughly ignored the social script. The elevator doors slid shut, cutting off the sight of his stunned expression. I looked down at the hand holding mine. Her palm was cool, but her grip was tight. "Victoria, what is going on?" I couldn't help but ask. "The gala will be crowded and chaotic," she said, staring at her own tense reflection in the polished steel walls of the elevator. "Stay close to me and don't drink anything." I was even more confused. No drinking? Then how was the plot supposed to unfold? The ballroom was a sea of glittering chandeliers and couture gowns. As expected, Damien wasted no time in finding us, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "Mr. Hayes, my apologies if I was rude earlier at the office. Allow me to offer a toast as an apology," he said, his smile as slick as a fox's. He offered one of the glasses to me. I glanced at it and noticed the bubbles looked off. It didn't take a genius to figure out it was drugged. Sleeping pills, maybe something worse, all designed to make me cause a scene. I was trying to think of a polite way to refuse when a hand intercepted the glass. It was Victoria. Before either of us could react, she took the glass meant for me and downed it in one go. Then she picked up the second glass, his, and drank that one too. The entire motion was fluid and shockingly fast. After finishing, she placed the 2 empty flutes on a passing waiter's tray with a sharp clink. Then, she looked Damien dead in the eye and said 4 words, "He doesn't drink." Her posture was like that of a lioness protecting her cub, fierce and territorial. A muscle twitched in Damien's jaw. He looked so awkward he could have drilled a hole in the floor with his embarrassment. As for me, I was just staring completely floored. That was the most badass thing I had ever seen. Seeing the look of utter humiliation on Damien's face, I felt a strange and unexpected surge of satisfaction. At the same time, a much larger question loomed in my mind. "Victoria, why are you protecting me like this?" She didn't seem to hate me like she did in the book. On the contrary, she was defending me at every turn, even at the cost of offending the story's hero. What in the world was going on? The ride back in the car was quiet. The chauffeur drove smoothly as Victoria and I sat in the back, a careful foot of space between us. I could smell the faint scent of champagne on her, mingled with her usual balsam fir perfume. It created a strange, calming aroma. She seemed a little drunk. She was leaning against the seat with her eyes closed, her long eyelashes casting soft shadows on her cheeks. I studied her profile discreetly. This was the first time I had ever looked at her this closely. The shifting city lights outside made her skin look almost translucent. Her lips were a pale, natural pink. Without that formidable, unapproachable aura, she was objectively a breathtakingly beautiful woman. "Don't," she suddenly whispered, her brow furrowing as if she were trapped in a nightmare. "Don't go." My interest piqued. I leaned in slightly, trying to hear what she was saying. "Don't go," she repeated, her voice thick with something that sounded like a sob. "That car, it's going to explode." My body went rigid. "Car? Explode?" Those words hit me like a bolt of lightning, cutting through the fog of my confusion. Late in the novel, to completely eliminate his rivals, Damien sets up an elaborate scheme. He tricks the Harrison family, Victoria's main business rivals, into thinking they can ruin Sterling Corp with a major construction project. In reality, it's a trap designed to lure Victoria to the construction site, where he plans to stage an accidental explosion. Of course, at the last minute, Damien swoops in like a knight in shining armor to save her. In the process, the book's secondary love interest, a guy who had been pining for Victoria, is unfortunately killed in the blast. That event was a major turning point in the latter half of the book, the moment that solidified the main couple's bond. Besides me, the guy with a god's eye view of the whole story, no one else could possibly know about it. But Victoria, how could she? And don't trust the Harrisons. She murmured in her sleep, her fingers clutching the fabric of her dress so tightly her knuckles turned white. Their project, it's a trap. It'll get you killed. A cold sweat broke out across my back. She knew about the explosion, and she knew the Harrison project was a trap. This was beyond coincidence. My heart hammered against my ribs. A ridiculous, impossible theory began to form in the back of my mind. Could it be? Could she possibly be I lunged forward and grabbed her by the shoulders, shaking her awake. Victoria, wake up. Her eyes fluttered open, still hazy with sleep. The dim light inside the car obscured her expression. What's going on with the Harrison construction project? I demanded, staring straight into her eyes. Her pupils contracted in the darkness. How do you know about that? She shot back, her voice instantly reverting to its sober, icy tone. You answer me first. I pressed. She fell silent. The car was dead quiet. The only sound our increasingly ragged breaths. After a long moment, she finally spoke again, her voice low and hoarse. Stay away from Damian Blackwood, she said. Instead of answering my question, she grabbed my arm, her grip so tight it felt like her fingers were digging into my bones. He's dangerous. My heart sank. She didn't just know the plot. She knew Damian was the villain. That realization hit me like a sledgehammer. I looked at this woman, at her eyes that were usually as cold and deep as a frozen lake. Right now, they clearly reflected my own shocked face, along with an emotion I had never seen in her before, a raw, overflowing, panic and despair. A crazy idea, one I could no longer suppress, took hold of my mind. I was a transmigrator. I knew the story because I had read it, but she also knew the story, and her every action was colored with regret for the past and terror of the future. If I was an actor who'd been handed the script, then she was an actor who had already performed the play once, screwed it up so badly, and was now being forced by the director to do it all over again. She was a regressor, reborn. The conclusion made my blood run cold. I stared at Victoria, feeling like I was looking at something not entirely human. No wonder she wouldn't sign the divorce papers. No wonder she was throwing money at me and keeping me glued to her side. No wonder she took a drug drink for me and went out of her way to antagonize Damian. Because in her previous life, her disposable starter husband died shortly after their divorce. She wasn't trying to trap me. She was trying to save me in her own clumsy, domineering, and frankly terrifying way. Oh my God. I let go of her shoulders and slumped back against the seat, my entire worldview turned upside down. What kind of mess had I gotten into? A guy who read the book and a woman who lived the book stuck together in a marriage of convenience. How are we supposed to navigate this? And more importantly, if she was reborn, what did she actually feel for me? Guilt? A need to atone? Or, I couldn't let myself think about it. All I knew was that from this moment on, the woman named Victoria Sterling was no longer just a one-dimensional character from a bad novel. She was a mystery, a life-or-death mystery I had to solve. In the days that followed, a strange, unspoken understanding formed between Victoria and me. I stopped trying to figure out how to escape and started observing her every move like a spectator. She, in turn, maintained her icy facade, arranging for a driver to take me to and from work every day and having her assistant deliver all sorts of expensive toys, from limited edition sneakers to high-end fishing rods, as if terrified that a moment of boredom might lead me to do something reckless. I knew she was protecting me in her own way, isolating me from all potential danger. For my part, I needed to confirm my theory. One afternoon, I happened to see a copy of the Wall Street Journal on her desk. I picked it up, feigning casual interest, and pointed to an article about a new virtual reality technology. This Novatech company sounds interesting, I said as if talking to myself. Too bad it's just a small startup. Probably won't go anywhere. I watched her reaction from the corner of my eye. Novatech was a minor player in the original novel. Mid-story, the company developed a revolutionary piece of tech, and its stock price skyrocketed hundreds of times overnight, creating a modern-day legend in the financial world. It was by getting in on the ground floor with this company that Damian Blackwood made his first massive fortune. If Victoria was truly reborn, there was no way she would let that opportunity slip by. Her expression didn't change. She just gave a non-committal and went back to signing her documents. I felt a pang of disappointment. Had I been wrong? But just as I was about to leave her office, I heard her pick up her internal phone and speak to Ashley in that same flat, emotionless tone. Inform the investment division. Liquidate all available assets, and at any cost, buy up every share of Novatech you can get. That's right. All of it. I froze mid-stride, the hair on the back of my neck standing on end. She took the bait. She knew. The realization sent my heart into overdrive, a mix of excitement and anxiety flooding through me. I wasn't alone in this. I had another player on my side, a much more powerful one, even if she didn't know I was a player too. A brilliant plan began to form in my mind. That evening, back at the penthouse, I broke my routine. Instead of heading straight to my game room, I waited for her on the living room sofa. When Victoria came home, she was visibly surprised to see me there. "Is something wrong?" she asked, kicking off her heels, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "We need to talk," I said, patting the cushion next to me. She hesitated for a moment before sitting down, keeping a careful 2 feet of distance between us. "Victoria," I began, getting straight to the point. "Can you see the future?" I didn't use the word reborn. It was too shocking. Seeing the future was a gentler way to probe. Her body instantly went rigid like a startled cat. She didn't confirm or deny it, just stared at me with those deep, unreadable eyes, her gaze full of suspicion. "What are you trying to say?" "I'm trying to say we should work together," I said, looking her directly in the eye. "I know things you don't, and you know things I don't. Instead of circling each other like this, we should team up." Her frown deepened. "I don't understand what you mean." "You will," I said with a small smile, playing my first card. "For instance, at the City Land auction next week in the South Bronx. Damien's real target isn't the commercial plot everyone is talking about. It's the unremarkable industrial plot right next to it. He's going to use a shell company called Apex Holdings to bid on it, because beneath that land, he's already confirmed there's a massive deposit of rare earth minerals. This was another one of Damien's major schemes from the book. He deliberately spread rumors that he was going after the commercial land to distract everyone, while his real prize was the mineral rights, worth a fortune. In her past life, Victoria had been misled by him and missed the opportunity, allowing Damien to consolidate even more power. After I said my piece, I watched her face intently. I saw her pupils contract sharply. Her hands, resting on her lap, clenched into tight fists. Her memories of the past life definitely didn't include details this specific. This was my advantage. As the reader, I knew all the behind-the-scenes details. "You," she started, as if to ask how I knew, but then she caught herself. "Don't worry about how I know," I interrupted. "You just need to know that I'm not your enemy. My goal is the same as yours, to make Damien Blackwood and anyone else who tries to bring down your family pay for it." Of course, the part one didn't say out loud was, "And then I can finally take my settlement and live a quiet life." Victoria was silent for a long time, so long that I thought she was going to refuse. Finally, she gave a single, sharp nod. Okay, was all she said. But that one word signified the official start of our unspoken alliance. A transmigrator and a regressor, 2 people with 2 different versions of the script, united by a common enemy. I looked at her tense profile and thought, maybe this stupid book world was about to get interesting after all. From the very beginning, our alliance was a strange comedy of secrets. We never spoke of things like transmigration or rebirth. Instead, we communicated in a kind of code that would have been meaningless to anyone else. For example, I might casually remark, "Man, nice weather today. Too bad I heard Prosperity Group is about to get hit with a financial fraud scandal next week. Their stock's going to tank." Victoria would just give a deadpan, "Oh," then silently pick up her phone and text her traders to short the hell out of Prosperity Group. Or she might hand me a file with information on someone I'd never seen before and say, "This person is a problem. Stay away from him." I would then know that he was likely a spy planted by Damien or someone who would betray her in the future. We operated like a pair of Cold War spies, using our secret knowledge to crush the competition in the market. Just 3 days after we bought into Novatech, the company announced a technological breakthrough. The stock went ballistic, adding tens of billions to Sterling Corporation's bottom line overnight. The board members started looking at me differently, as if I were some kind of financial oracle. In reality, I was just the messenger. Victoria was the one who executed every move. Her business acumen and sheer nerve were beyond anything I could have imagined. Once she had a target, she moved like a precision-guided missile. Fast, direct, and devastatingly effective. Our first major joint operation was the South Bronx land auction. "You're sure Damien will use a company called Apex Holdings?" Victoria asked the night before, triple-checking the details. "Positive," I confirmed. And to raise the capital, he's already leveraged 3 of his most profitable ongoing projects. He's betting everything on this. Good, Victoria said, a cold glint in her eye. In that moment, I saw the true Ice Queen CEO, the absolute power and confidence of someone who is always in control. The next day, at the auction, Damien was seated not far from us, a smug, self-assured look on his face. When the bidding for the seemingly worthless industrial plot began, the room was silent. Then, a small, unknown company, Apex Holdings, placed a bid. Our own shell company, equally obscure, immediately countered. The price climbed from a starting bid of 50 million, 60 million, 70 million. Damien's expression started to shift. He clearly hadn't expected any real competition for this useless piece of land. When our shell company bid 100 million, Damien's side hesitated. I glanced at Victoria. She was sipping a cup of tea, looking completely unbothered. But the slight tightening of her jaw betrayed her own tension. 105 million. Apex's representative called out, his voice strained. That had to be Damien's limit. Our representative looked over at us for instructions. Victoria set down her teacup and gave him a nearly imperceptible signal to stop. 105 million, going once. 105 million, going twice. Bang! The auctioneer's gavel came down. Sold. Damien let out a long breath, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. He even shot a condescending look in our direction, as if to say, "You can't compete with me." He had no idea that he had just spent over $100 million on a truly worthless piece of dirt. Because I happened to remember a line in the book mentioning that the geological survey data for the rare earth minerals had been faked. Damien himself only found out he'd been scammed by his own expert after he'd bought the land. All I did was make the hole he dug for himself a little bit deeper. After the auction, as we were leaving, I said to Victoria, "That was brilliant." And I meant it. For the first time, I wasn't just a passive observer of the plot. I had actively participated and landed a solid punch on Damien. The feeling was incredible. Victoria glanced at me, her expression as blank as ever, but the tips of her ears turned a faint shade of pink. "You deserve the credit," she said softly. It was the first time she had ever directly praised me. A warmth spread through my chest. I was about to say something else when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered, and a frantic voice on the other end said, "Is this Ethan Hayes? You need to get to Mount Sinai Hospital right away. Your mother." She fell down a flight of stairs. My mind went completely blank. My mother. In this world, I had a mother? When I got to the hospital, the light above the operating room was still on. A middle-aged woman, my aunt in this life, was sobbing on a bench in the hallway. Through her tearful accusations, I pieced together the story. The original Ethan's father had died young, and his mother had raised him by herself through incredible hardship. A year ago, when the Sterling family chose Ethan for the marriage of convenience with Victoria, they had paid a substantial sum of money. But that ungrateful bastard, after getting the money, didn't give a dime to his mother. Instead, he treated her like a burden, leaving her all alone in a rundown apartment in Queens and never visiting. Missing her son, the old woman had tried to take the subway into the city to see him today. She had slipped on the station steps and taken a bad fall. Listening to my aunt's curses, I felt a confusing mix of emotions. I wasn't the real Ethan, but the guilt and heartache that emanated from this body felt terrifyingly real. I leaned against the wall, feeling weak. Just then, the sharp clicking of heels echoed down the hallway. Victoria had arrived. She was followed by Ashley and several doctors who had the unmistakable air of top specialists. "What's the situation?" she asked, walking straight to me, her brow furrowed as she looked at the red light of the ore. "They're still working on her," I said, my voice hoarse. She gave me a quick glance, then turned to the doctor she'd brought. "Get in there. I don't care what it costs. You save her." The specialist nodded and immediately scrubbed in, disappearing into the operating room. I realized then that she had summoned the hospital's chief of staff, and every department had the moment she got the call. She came and stood beside me, saying nothing. Looking at her, I suddenly thought that for a woman who seemed so cold, her heart wasn't nearly as hard as she let on. Hours later, the light finally went off. The lead surgeon came out, pulling off his mask. The surgery was a success. The patient is stable. It's a good thing she was brought in so quickly, and even better that Ms. Sterling brought in the city's best neurosurgeon. Another half hour and it would have been a different story. My knees buckled, and I nearly collapsed. A hand steadied me. It was Victoria. Her hand was as cool as ever, but it grounded me. "Thank you," I said, looking at her with genuine gratitude. She shook her head, her lips parting as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she remained silent. My mother was moved to a VIP suite with 24-hour private nursing care. By the time Victoria had handled everything, it was late into the night. "Go home," she said to me. I shook my head. "I'm staying with her." "But you have to, Victoria." I cut her off, meeting her eyes. "She's my mom." Victoria fell silent. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Fine. I'll have Ashley bring you a change of clothes and some food." With that, she turned and left. As I watched her figure disappear down the hall, a strange feeling washed over me. This cold, one-dimensional character from the book was slowly becoming a real, complex person. She had her own principles, her own vulnerabilities, and her own kindness. I sat by my mother's bedside all night. The next morning, she woke up. When she saw me, tears immediately welled in her cloudy eyes. "Ethan, you came." She tried to reach for me, but she was too weak. I quickly took her hand, my heart aching. "Mom, I'm so sorry." Those 3 words were for the original Ethan, and for myself. For the next few days, I put all my work at the company on hold and focused completely on taking care of my mother at the hospital. Victoria never once pressured me to come back. Instead, she had Ashley deliver freshly made soups and all kinds of nourishing foods every day, ensuring both my mother and I were well looked after. Under my care, my mother's recovery was swift. One day, when she was feeling much better, she held my hand and asked, "Ethan, are you and Victoria not getting along?" I was taken aback. "Mom, why would you ask that?" "I can see it," my mother sighed. "That girl, she has a good heart. She's just not good at showing it. You're the man. You need to be more patient with her. It's not easy for a young woman like her to run such a huge company all by herself." Her words hit me. I had never considered that this was how my mother saw Victoria. "And this," my mother said, pulling an old savings account passbook from under her pillow and pressing it into my hand. "This is the money you gave me when you got married. I haven't touched a cent. Take it and buy Victoria something nice. Spoil her a little. There's nothing so bad between a husband and a wife that it can't be fixed." I looked down at the passbook. The balance was $100,000. It was a fraction of the money the Sterlings had paid, and the only money the original Ethan had ever given his mother. And she hadn't spent any of it, saving it all for him. My eyes instantly burned. "Mom, go on," she said, patting my hand. "Don't keep her waiting." Clutching the passbook, still warm from her touch, I walked out of the room. Victoria was standing at the end of the hall, as if she had been waiting for me. She saw me and walked over. "How is she?" she began to ask. I didn't answer. I just held out the passbook to her. She froze, looking at me in confusion. "My mom told me to give this to you," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "She said I should use it to buy you something you like, to make you happy." Victoria's whole body shuddered. She stared at the passbook in my hand, then back at my face. And in her perpetually icy eyes, a layer of moisture rapidly began to form. I never thought I would see Victoria Sterling cry. She didn't sob or make a sound. The tears just started to fall, rolling down her perfect cheeks, drop by drop, splashing onto the passbook I held out. Each drop felt like it was landing directly on my heart. I panicked. I completely panicked. "Hey, don't cry," I stammered, awkwardly raising a hand to wipe her tears, then stopping midair, unsure if I should. Did I say something wrong?" She shook her head, trying to wipe her face with the back of her hand, but the tears only fell faster, like a broken string of pearls. She started, her voice choked with sobs. "I just never expected." What did she never expect? That my mother would tell me to use the money to spoil her, or that I would actually tell her? Seeing her so heartbroken, so vulnerable, and yet trying so hard to hold it all in, something deep inside me cracked open. I sighed, stuffed the passbook back in my pocket, and then gently I pulled her into a hug. Her body was stiff, like a block of ice. But slowly in my arms, that ice began to melt. She buried her face in my shoulder, and the sob she had been suppressing for so long finally broke free. That night, I left my mother in the care of the private nurse and took Victoria back to the penthouse. Her eyes were red and swollen. We sat on the living room sofa, neither of us speaking first. After a long silence, I decided to break it. Victoria, I said, looking at her, can we talk about the last lifetime? I had finally asked. Her body went rigid again. She looked up at me, her face a mask of disbelief. You know, I've guessed some of it, I nodded. Ever since you started talking in your sleep in the car. The color drained from her face. So, when I told you about the land auction, you were testing me. Yes, I admitted. Her eyes dimmed, and a bitter, self-deprecating smile touched her lips. Of course. I've been acting so strangely. It makes sense you would be suspicious. Can you tell me what happened? I asked gently. In the last life, why are you so afraid of me getting hurt? It was the question that had been haunting me. She was silent. This silence was longer and heavier than any before. Just as I thought she wouldn't answer, she finally spoke, her voice raw and scraped. In the last life, we got divorced. You took the money and left the city. I thought we would never see each other again. Then, a year later, Damien set a trap to take over my company. The construction site explosion you know about. He tricked me into going there, and I was trapped in the warehouse he'd rigged to blow. Her voice trembled, as if she was reliving that moment of utter despair. I thought I was going to die. And then, you showed up. I froze. Me? The original Ethan? How could I have? I don't know. She shook her head, fresh tears tracing paths down her cheeks. To this day, I still don't know why you were there. You were supposed to be long gone. You ran into the fire and dragged me out of the rubble. But a falling steel beam. It hit your leg. You pushed me out of the warehouse, but you were trapped under a collapsing roof. In the end, I survived. And you. She couldn't go on, covering her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. My mind was a complete blank. None of this was in the novel. In the book, the person who saved Victoria was Damien Blackwood. The disposable husband, Ethan, had died in a random car crash at the very beginning of the story. Me, or rather, the Ethan from the last life, died saving her? No wonder. No wonder that after she was reborn, she did everything in her power to stop our divorce. No wonder she was trying so hard to be good to me, to keep me by her side, because in her heart, she owed me her life. So, I said, the words catching in my throat, the only reason you're being nice to me is guilt. She looked up, her eyes swimming with tears. At first, yes, she answered honestly. I didn't want you to die because of me again. I wanted to make it up to you, to make sure you lived a long, happy life this time. But then, her voice grew quiet. Then I realized I couldn't tell the difference anymore. The difference between what? Between wanting to keep you safe out of guilt and using guilt as an excuse because I wanted to keep you. A faint blush crept up her neck, and she looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Looking at her, my heart began to pound uncontrollably. All this time, I thought I was in a corporate spy thriller. It turned out to be a tragic, star-crossed romance. And I, the spectator from another world, had become one of the main characters without even realizing it. Victoria, I took a deep breath, knowing it was time to share my own secret. What if I told you that I'm not the original Ethan, either? She stared at me, her tears forgotten. What? What do you mean? I said with a wry smile, the Ethan who died for you, the one you've been trying to repay. His soul isn't in this body anymore. I'm from another world. I'm just a reader who happened to pick up the book of your life. I had finally laid all my cards on the table. It was only fair to her and to me. Victoria just stared at me. The expression on her face shifted from shock to confusion and then to relief. Is that so? She whispered, and then she actually smiled. It was the first time I had ever seen her smile. It was a watery, shaky thing, but was like the sun breaking through the clouds, illuminating her entire face. That's good. I asked, confused. Yes, she nodded, reaching out and gently touching my cheek. This way, I don't have to carry the weight of that life anymore. I can just, like you, simply for who you are. My brain short-circuited. After that night, everything changed. We went from being secret allies to something like a couple in training. Victoria no longer kept her distance. She still didn't smile much, and her words were often clipped and cool, but her actions became absurdly overprotective. For instance, I sneezed one morning after getting out of bed. 30 minutes later, a team of private doctors was at the penthouse, armed with an arsenal of medical equipment, insisting on giving me a full physical exam from head to toe. Another time, I was going downstairs for a glass of water and slipped, almost falling. The next day, every single hard surface floor in the penthouse was covered with thick, non-slip carpeting imported from Germany. When my mom was discharged from the hospital, she wanted to move back to her old place in Queens, saying the penthouse was too fancy. Without a word, Victoria bought the entire apartment building. She hired the best contractors in the city, and over 3 days, without changing the building's exterior, they completely renovated the interior. New elevator, refurbished hallways, updated plumbing and electrical, and an upgraded security system that would make a bank vault jealous. I was finally learning the true meaning of stupid rich. But the most ridiculous incident was the car crash. After the massive loss at the land auction, Damien's company was on the verge of collapse. Desperate, he decided to go for broke and enact the original plan from the novel, have Ethan accidentally killed. He hired a crew of thugs to stage a fatal traffic accident on my way home from work. Victoria, of course, had foreseen all of it. That afternoon, I was riding home in a chauffeur-driven Rolls-Royce as usual. Halfway there, a massive dump truck suddenly roared out of a side street, barreling directly toward us. My driver, a stoic older gentleman, didn't even flinch. He actually yawned. I instinctively squeezed my eyes shut. There was a deafening crunch. The Rolls shook slightly, about as much as if it had hit a pothole. I opened my eyes. The front of the dump truck that had tried to T-bone us was completely caved in, crumpled like a soda can. Our car didn't have a single scratch on it. Before the dust settled, a dozen men in black suits swarmed out from the cars behind us and from the roadside greenery. In seconds, they had dragged the stunned thugs from the truck and had them pinned to the ground. The whole operation was over in less than a minute, executed with the precision of a movie stunt team. I sat in the car, my jaw on the floor. The driver glanced at me in a rearview mirror and smiled kindly. "Don't you worry, Mr. Hayes, Ms. Sterling had this car custom-built in Germany. It's fully armored. A truck is nothing. This thing could take a rocket launcher. And those men outside, they're your security detail, ex-special forces. They follow you 24/7 in shifts." I rolled down the window and looked at the subdued criminals, the wrecked truck, and then at my pristine land tank of a car. I had only one thought. "Damien, how did you ever think you could win?" When I got home, Victoria was waiting. The moment she saw me, she rushed over, her hands checking me from head to toe, the fear and relief in her eyes impossible to fake. "Are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere?" "I'm fine," I said, laughing as I took her hands. "Not a scratch. But don't you think this is all a little extra?" "It's not extra," she said, her face serious. "Your safety is the most important thing." Looking at her earnest expression, I felt a wave of warmth and amusement. This woman, she was adorable. I reached out and gently pinched her cheek. Her body stiffened and a blush instantly spread across her face, but she didn't pull away. "Victoria," I teased, "are you this worried about me because you're in love with me?" Her face turned a deeper shade of crimson. She averted her gaze, her voice stubborn. "I just don't want to owe you anything." "Oh." I leaned closer, so close I could feel the warmth of her breath. "You just don't want to owe me? No other reason." She backed away until her legs hit the sofa, and she had nowhere else to go. She looked up, mustering her courage, her beautiful eyes shimmering. "Fine," she blurted out, squeezing her eyes shut as if bracing for impact. "I like you. I liked you in the last life, and I like you in this life. Are you happy now?" She tried to push me away and run, but I wasn't about to let her escape. I pulled her into my arms and lowered my head, capturing her lips with mine. Her lips, like the rest of her, were cool at first, but they quickly warmed, softening under mine. When the kiss ended, she was breathless, hiding her face against my chest. I held her close, feeling my own heart swell with a feeling I could only describe as happiness. To hell with the book. To hell with the hero. Right now, all I wanted was to hold my reborn wife and never let go. Damien finally snapped. The failed assassination attempt cost him dearly. The thugs he hired quickly gave him up to the police. Though he spent a fortune on lawyers to distance himself from the crime, his reputation in the business world was ruined. Combined with the catastrophic losses from the land auction, the stock price of his company plummeted, pushing it to the brink of bankruptcy. He's going to make one last move, Victoria said, her voice grave as she reviewed a financial report. The explosion? I asked. Yes, she nodded. It's his last chance. If he can use me as a hostage to extort a massive ransom from Sterling Corp, he might be able to recover. So what's our plan? We'll play his game, Victoria said, looking at me. Her eyes held the same mischievous glint as my own. This time, we're the hunters. Our plan was simple. Victoria would pretend to fall for his trap. Following the false information Damien was spreading, she would believe the Harrison family wanted to negotiate, and she would go alone to the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Meanwhile, I would be waiting outside with a prepositioned security team and the police ready to close the net. The day of the operation was gray and overcast. Before Victoria left, she fussed over my tie, adjusting it again and again, her eyes filled with worry. Are you sure you don't want me to send you in the armored car? I asked, still uneasy. No, the act has to be convincing, she shook her head. Don't worry, I have a tracking device, and I'm wearing a bulletproof vest. You, on the other hand, have to promise me you'll wait outside. No heroics. Do you understand? She sounded like a mother sending her kid to school. I smiled and tapped the tip of her nose. Loud and clear, my dear wife. She blushed. I'm not your wife yet. I watched the ordinary-looking sedan carry her away, and despite all our preparations, my stomach twisted in knots. From inside the surveillance van parked a block away, we watched the monitors intently. On the screen, Victoria was led into the warehouse by Damien's men. Damien was inside, just as we'd expected. He looked haggard and worn, his eyes filled with a manic, venomous rage. Victoria Sterling. You finally came, he said, his laugh bordering on hysterical. It's over, Damien. Victoria's voice was as calm and steady as ever, as if she were the one in control, not the hostage. Over? It's not over, he shrieked. As long as I have you, I can bring the entire Sterling Empire down with me. This whole place is rigged with explosives. I push this button, and we all go up in smoke. He waved a remote detonator in his hand, his face a mask of desperation. Move in, I said into the radio. Instantly, SWAT teams stormed the warehouse from all entrances. NYPD, don't move. Damien seemed shocked by how quickly the police arrived. He froze for a second, then broke into an even more demented laugh. Too late. You can all die with me. He slammed his thumb down on the button. My heart leaped into my throat. And nothing happened. The warehouse was silent. The smile on Damien's face froze. He mashed the button again and again, the small light on the remote blinking frantically, but the expected explosion never came. What? How is this possible? He muttered, his expression shifting from insane fury to utter despair. Because we bought off your bomb expert a week ago, I said, my voice amplified by a bullhorn as I walked through the main warehouse door, followed by a squad of officers. What you thought were explosives have been replaced with bags of flour. The game is over, Damien. He stared at me, then at Victoria, and then, like a deflating balloon, he collapsed to the ground, the useless remote clattering on the concrete. His once handsome face was now a pasty gray of defeat. Officers moved in and cuffed him. And just like that, the story's great hero was finished. I walked over to Victoria and took her hand. It's okay now. I know, she nodded, her fingers lacing tightly with mine. We smiled at each other, no more words needed. But as we turned to leave, Damien, already in handcuffs, suddenly let out a roar. He threw off the two officers holding him, pulled a hidden knife from his jacket, and lunged straight for Victoria. It all happened in a flash. Acting on pure instinct, I shoved Victoria out of the way and stepped in front of her. There was a sickening, wet thud. A searing pain erupted in my abdomen. I looked down and saw the handle of the knife sticking out of my stomach. A dark red stain instantly blossomed across my white shirt. Ethan! Victoria's heart-shattering scream was the last thing I heard before the world went black. When I woke up, I was in a familiar VIP suite at the hospital. The wound in my stomach was a dull ache, but I knew I was going to be fine. Victoria was asleep in a chair by my bed. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. Even in sleep, her hand was clutching mine tightly. Looking at her, my heart ached with a tender warmth. This silly woman. I must have scared her half to death again. I shifted slightly, and her eyes shot open. "You're awake?" she said, her face lighting up with relief before her eyes reddened. "You idiot. You scare me so much." The doctor said the knife was less than an inch from a major artery. "But it missed, right?" I smiled, trying to comfort her. "Besides, I promised you I was going to live a long life this time." Her tears started to fall, splashing onto the back of my hand. "You're such a jerk, Ethan," she sobbed. I know. I'm a jerk," I said, letting her gently pound her fists on my chest. "I promise I won't make you worry like that again, okay?" Her hitting slowly turned into hugging, and she began to cry in earnest. I held her, stroking her back, feeling as if I had the entire world in my arms. Damien's assault charge was added to his long list of crimes, and he was sentenced to a long prison term. His company was liquidated. The era of the novel's main characters was officially over. And for Victoria and me, life was just beginning. She barely left my side while I recovered in the hospital. She fed me, washed my face, and even helped me to the bathroom, treating me like a fragile, helpless baby. When my mom visited and saw us being so openly affectionate, she couldn't stop smiling. "It's about time," she kept saying. "It's about time." The day I was discharged, Victoria drove me back to the penthouse. When we walked in, I saw that we had a guest. It was a man who looked like some kind of new age guru, with a long beard and flowing robes. "Who's this?" I asked. "This is Master Cleary," Victoria explained. "I invited him here to take a look at you." "Look at me for what?" "To check if your soul is stable," she whispered. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Because I was a transmigrator, she was worried my soul was unstable and might just disappear one day. So she'd hired a spiritualist to perform a ritual. What could I say? I just went along with it, letting the man chant around me for a while and draw a symbol on my forehead with some kind of oil. That night, when we were alone, I came up behind her and wrapped my arms around her waist, resting my chin on her shoulder. "Victoria, marry me." Her body went still. "But we're already married." That was different. I shook my head, turning her around to face me. "That was a contract. It was fake. This time, I want you to be my wife. For real." I didn't have a ring or flowers, but I pulled something from my pocket, the old savings passbook my mom had given me. "My mom said I should use this to buy you things you like, to make you happy," I said, pressing it into her hand. Then I dropped to one knee. "Victoria Sterling, I, Ethan Hayes, am officially proposing to you. I don't have money or power. All I have to give you is my life and my whole heart. But I promise to spend the rest of my days protecting you, loving you, and making you the happiest woman in the world. Will you marry me?" Victoria looked at me, then at the passbook in her hand, and tears once again streamed down her face. But this time, she was smiling through them. She nodded vigorously, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I will." Our wedding was a small, private affair. No business tycoons, no media, just our closest family and friends. My mom wore a beautiful red dress and sat in the front row, beaming so brightly her eyes were little crescents of joy. Victoria, in a simple white gown, looked ethereal. As she walked down the aisle toward me, I saw her smile, a genuine, radiant smile, free from any of her past burdens. In that moment, it felt like the entire world had lit up. Married life was peaceful and sweet. I didn't go back to being a useless vice director at Sterling Corp. Instead, with some seed money sponsored by Victoria, I started my own video game development studio. It was a small company, but we were passionate about the games we made. Victoria was still the same powerful, decisive CEO at work. But only I knew that when she came home, she would trade her killer heels for the fuzzy bear slippers I bought her and try, with clumsy determination, to cook dinner for me. Her cooking was often a disaster, but I ate every last bite. We had our arguments, of course, like when I wanted to buy a new gaming console, and she insisted the radiation was bad for me, then solved the problem by acquiring the company that made the console. Or when she wanted to buy me a private jet, and I said it was too extravagant, so she bought an entire airline and established a private route just for me. Our life was filled with the simple, humble struggles of the ultra-rich. but mostly it was sweet. We would curl up on the sofa and watch old movies. I would bring her homemade, ordered in, lunches at the office when she was working late. She remembered every little thing I liked, and on my birthday, she filled an entire room with surprises. She was still terrible at saying I love you, but she showed it in everything she did. One night, as we were lying in bed, she asked me quietly, "Ethan, do you think one day you might just go back?" I knew it was her deepest, lingering fear. I didn't answer with words. I just rolled over and pulled her tightly against me. "Never," I whispered, kissing her forehead. "My home is right here. Home is wherever you are." She snuggled closer, found a comfortable spot in my arms, and drifted off to sleep. I watched her peaceful face, a profound sense of calm settling over me. Transmigration, rebirth, side characters, protagonists. None of it mattered anymore. The person I loved was right here in my arms. And that was the only happy ending I would ever need. Bonus, seen in a distant, higher dimension. A robed figure, its face obscured, stood before a vast screen of shimmering data. The screen displayed an image of Ethan and Victoria, asleep in each other's arms. World 73 status report, a synthesized voice announced. Plot deviation at 98.7%. Core protagonist Damian Blackwood has been neutralized. World line stability returning to acceptable parameters. Evaluation, the robed figure asked, its voice devoid of emotion. World line repair successful. Anomalous Soul K, 1087, Ethan Hayes, has formed a deep spiritual bond with the world's regressor, Victoria Sterling. Extraction is no longer possible. Per the Anomalous Soul Containment Protocol, Article 37, recommending on-site integration and redesignation as a native entity. Approved, the robed figure said. With a wave of its hand, the bright red anomaly tag on Ethan's file in the data stream flickered and turned to a calm, stable green. Archived. Its work done, the figure picked up a cup of what looked like tea and took a sip. Next case. Oh, World 89, the ex-Special Forces doctor and his billionaire CEO bride? Another transmigrator derailed the plot by siding with the villain? Ugh, this generation of transmigrators is so much work. End.